daughters there who've all done study abroad, so I'm a natural mom. Don't do anything to me, please. I'm a good one. I behave myself. I really support the programs. But I'm outside the United States, and I'm seeing the results of the work that you guys do. And I especially have strong feelings about ICES, because for about a decade, I was working with a lot of different organizations. And there's a lot of organizations doing a lot of great things, but what I've always noticed with ICES is what John mentioned in his talk, this heart for the young people, the values. So I am one of your biggest fans in Spain. I preach ICES to the agencies that I work with. I train both students and parents, especially those parents, in several agencies. I train the parents not to trust anything their kids tell them, because their kids are not qualified international news correspondents when they're here in the United States and don't know what they're talking about when they try to tell their parents what is happening over here when there's some little issue going on, or big. So I just want to, again, congratulate all of you, because I think that you are an amazing organization. What my experience working in exchange in Spain over the last 10 years with an agent in an agency, training and then doing all the support over there, dealing with the natural parents every day, and then also connecting with their kids, because they wouldn't trust me if I hadn't talked to their kids. I'm sorry, but yes, I did it. Talk to the kids, and then I could come back to the parents and tell them that as an American and as someone who's spoken to your parents, this is what's actually happening and all that. But what my experience again and again with ICES was just how well you take care of the kids, how much you care about them, how much you care about doing the right thing, not covering up if something's happened, like John said about the mistakes. That has come through to me. That's something I tell the agencies, any agency, anyone in Spain who asks me, well, you know, who should I send my kid with? Well, I say, get this agency and tell them you want ICES. Why? Because I've noticed that if something does happen and maybe there's some little mistake that happens, you guys own it, and then you fix it, and then everything flows and everything continues with the exchange, and it's fantastic. So that's why I am so happy to be related to this agency, to this organization. And I feel so privileged to work with Carrie and to work on the blog for you guys. I do want to just tell you a little bit more then. Okay, so I've been in Spain for 25 years. You've got that. I've sent my kids, all 4 of my daughters have done a year abroad, an exchange, either in France or in French-speaking Canada. It has totally changed their lives. That's the other thing I want you to know, is that I feel bad that you guys don't get to see that. You don't get to see what happens. You guys are like preparing these seeds that you're planting all over the world, and the kids go back there, and they are different people when they arrive. All 4 of my daughters left home not having any idea what they wanted to do with their life, and they all came back knowing exactly what they wanted to do in university. I was amazed. So much more mature, so much easier to deal with and, you know, interact with. I mean, they became my friends when they came back, because they're grown up. So I just want to point that out, that what you're doing is really huge. It's true that youth exchange changes the world. It really changes the world, and it's you guys who make that happen. The people who are out there on the ground finding the families. So, and then managing all of this. So this talk today, I called it 7 Habits of Highly Effective Coordinators, but really maybe I should have said 7 Habits of Highly Effective Youth Exchange, you know, because I'm not a coordinator. I kind of did the opposite of your job over on the other side of the world, so I have a lot of ideas. But coordinators, because it's really for you, the ones who are going to want to use this, okay? This is really my take on my favorite book, one of my favorite books. I first read The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People 25 years ago. It was right after I arrived in Spain. I was a new mom of a 2-month-old baby. And I came back here and I found that book at a secondhand bookstore and brought it back with me, and it just really did a lot for me. I am not a master of the 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. I just want you to know that. It's my goal. I'm getting better. After 25 years, I think I finally really fully understand all 7 habits. And some of them I'm actually practicing really well, and others I'm still working on. I think habit 6 is one of my hardest. So I'm going to give you a brief overview of what those habits are, and then what I want to do is go through them one by one and just share with you my own personal insights for how I think these 7 habits can be useful to us in youth exchange, how they can inspire us and give us insights, because that's what they really do for me. Every time I go back over these habits, applying them to a different area of my life, They give me new insights. That is something I wanted to show you, that they're for many areas of life. When I first read the book, I saw it as a parenting book. Wow, 7 Habits of Highly Effective Parents. Effective, that word means getting results, right? Not just being a parent, but being an effective parent. That's what I used it for. And as I launched back into the workplace, I realized, no, there were 7 habits for a highly effective worker, employee, professional. Wow, they gave me so much leverage in the workplace. Just at the personal level for taking care of yourself and reaching your own goals, they're amazing. And then I think they have a lot of application in youth exchange. For the students, if we can pass this on to them, and I use it a lot when I'm working with students and parents too. For the host families, if we could somehow transmit these 7 habits to the host families, I think they would get even more out of the program too. It's really useful. But also for us personally, for me, applying these habits to my work in youth exchange has been for personal growth. It's helped me feel like every single issue that arises, I squeeze so many personal benefits out of it. I learn so much that I think, wow, I can never quit working in this field because it gives me so many opportunities for learning new things every day from applying these habits. So anyways, the habits are, just a brief overview. Be proactive. I think we all want to be proactive, don't we? They sound very simple, but they're very profound. Begin with the end in mind. In other words, getting the big picture of where you're going before you go there. Putting first things first. That's a time management habit, which has been talked about a lot yesterday and today. Think win-win, which for me is just, it makes me dizzy when I think about what does win-win really mean in youth exchange, where we want every player to be winning, and we're trying to negotiate between everyone whenever there's an issue or a conflict or a question or a doubt. You want everyone to come out feeling like they win, but that's a pretty tall order, isn't it? It sounds so nice. It's so easy to say, hey, win-win. But when it really comes down to it, how do you convince a student who wants to go out all the time and is going to have to stay home more and do more things with the family that that's a win, right? It's something to think about. It's interesting. Habit 5 is seek first to understand and then to be understood. So it's that difficult habit of true listening where we really want to get to the bottom of what the other person has to say first. Habit 6 is to synergize, and this again is a huge opportunity in exchange where we're dealing with people from around the world and we can get diverse perspectives and create new things that have never been from those diverse perspectives. And habit 7 is sharpen the saw, which is renewing yourself, taking care of yourself, and keeping yourself from burning out, for example. So let's go ahead and start with the first habit, be proactive. I know we all want to be proactive. I want to be proactive all the time. But it helps me to come back and look at this sometimes and think about this idea that there's this circle of control that you have no matter what you're doing, whether it's you're trying to place 50 kids or you're trying to get your child to get better grades at school or whatever it is you're trying to do in life. There is this circle of control, and there are certain things that are outside of your circle of control, things that you absolutely cannot change. Like, for example, what Judy just mentioned. If a school is really not going to take kids, I'm sorry, you know they're not going to take the kids, that's out of your control, right? Nothing more you can do. Fortunately, there are always things that are inside of our circle of control or influence as well. Things we can do, like what Judy said, look for another school, right? That is within our circle of influence or control. And it's like that for everything out there. Any issue you're dealing with, you're always going to have a lot of things that you cannot change. The problem that we have, I don't know about you, but I have this problem, and I think it's pretty common. It's really easy to get bogged down in the stuff that you can't do anything about. And that disempowers you, and it kind of takes away your enthusiasm, right? So the trick about this, what I love in the book, too, that he explains, is that our power and our influence in this life, in everything we're doing, in every problem we're trying to solve, it grows. Well, first of all, when we're focusing on the things that we can't control, it shrinks. So the more we think about, worry about, and complain about the things that we just can't change, the smaller and tinier our circle of control gets. It eats up all of our attention and our energy, and it bogs us down so we're not transmitting positive feelings, among other things. But it also just simply means we're not doing the things that we could be doing, right? So the other really nice thing about this is that the more we focus on the little things we can do, even if they're super tiny, the circle gets bigger and bigger and bigger, and more things come into our control. And we find that we have more influence and more power. So let's look at how this might play out. As a local coordinator, things that might be out of your control, and I actually made this before. I wasn't really thinking so much of the aspect of the schools, and that really is big, but I was thinking about things like the natural families that your kids come from. You don't control who those people are and what kind of parents they have and all that. We don't control the culture the kids come from. They all come from diverse cultures with very different expectations for what the exchange will be. We don't control their upbringing, what they learned in their home and what kind of manners they have and things like that, or the customs that they are hoping to continue practicing when they're here. I put one of making, Italian pasta, but I could have put something of these kids who want to go out all the time, and that's what for them is really exciting, and maybe they come here and they need a different lifestyle. Other things outside of our control are the personalities that you bring together and the chemistry between all the people involved, the plans, whether or not the host family is going to be one of these busy ones who takes the kids everywhere or not, and a lot of et ceteras. There's so many factors involved in the exchange that are not in your control. But putting those things aside, there are lots of things inside of your control. So I would like someone to go with the mic in a minute, if they can. I'm giving you some warning, Brad. I just want you to think for a moment that of the things that really are within your control as you develop your program at the local level and deal with the students and the host families every year. Things that are in your control that can make it better. And if you could go around, does anyone have any ideas? Can you raise your hand? Or we'll just send Brad around to the tables. Here.
Where?
Come on, right here.
Up front, okay.
Up front.
Got to raise those hands high, guys.
Yeah.
It's a big room.
And think, everybody, what is in your control to make better every year?
Well, for me, it's the manner in which I communicate with my exchange student and the families.
Perfect.
And the siblings in that family as well.
And how do you do that? Is that communication on a regular basis or through training or?
Well, I do it, of course, I do the monthly contacts, but I prefer to do all of mine pretty much face-to-face. I don't do just the one that's required. Mm-hmm. And then with the schools as well, making sure but that may be through email or phone more so, but with the students and the families more direct. And outside of that too, I still just kind of routinely just call, and also if they get involved in any recreational activities with the school, they invite me to like their games and I go and support them.
Wow. So really what she's doing with that proactive communication that's going above and beyond the call of duty is she's building relationships every time with that face-to-face, and that is the type of thing that grows her influence. When she reaches out to one of these kids with an issue, now there's a relationship there. They really know her personally. So that's the kind of thing I'm talking about. Anybody else?
Yes.
Oh, good.
What is in my control is my attitude and my thoughts. I can choose what I'm going to focus on. I can choose how I'm going to present it. That's totally in my control and no one else's.
I love it. I think about that a lot too, because there's so many times you like to figure out, so what can I do to get more things in my control? Well, starting right there with that what's in here is often the first step, isn't it? Who else?
I think no matter how serious or difficult the situation is, to have a sense of humor, because people will respond to you better if you're not uptight and if you are relaxed and can convey that way of dealing with situations, having a good sense of humor and conveying that to the people you're involved with.
Excellent.
I think not only having a good relationship with your students, but also build a very good relationship with your host parents and the siblings, because when you have those close bonds with them, it always keeps a door open when you need another family.
Right. That's a great idea. Excellent.
Perfect. Right beside me.
My dad's advice always sticks with me. He taught my sister and I the 5 Ps: prior planning prevents poor performance. So like with being proactive, I think any kind of planning you could do related to schools or families,
Right.
it all builds on itself. So planning.
Planning, excellent. Totally inside of your control, right? And you can always change your plans. So I'm just going to share with you some of the things that I've found to be inside my control. And you think I'm on the other side of the world, and I started out working with the natural parents and taking their calls. And at the beginning, I felt like I had very little control, very little power over what was happening. And I was just receiving these calls and, oh, this is happening in the States. And, oh, my son is not happy here. Or I don't know what to do about this. Or what about the insurance? And of course, you learn and you grow in the job and you get more information and training. But more than anything, I had to learn there were many, many just little strategies I could take to have more influence with the parents. A lot of it was teaching and training. That's really my specialty, is I just do lots of teaching and training and working on those expectations that they have and helping them understand what's going on. And this idea of communicating, I do think communicating is one of the biggest proactive things we can do. A lot of times we're so busy, we don't do some of this preventive planning type, looking ahead communication. Other things inside your control are shaping the expectations of people. Maybe the kids arrive here with all kinds of expectations, but from the time they get off that plane, you can start working to reshape the expectations and really making them realistic expectations. They come here with expectations that they've gained through Instagram and YouTube videos, because lots of students who do a year abroad are now having YouTube channels and telling the kids all about their experiences. And of course, everything on social media is quite skewed in one direction or another. So they come here with all kinds of expectations, but that's something that, you really can start shaping those. Other thing inside your control is building trust. It's this whole thing of relationships and knowing that many cultures around the world are so different from the United States in terms of how they build trust. It really has to be face-to-face. It really has to be personal. I have begged and pleaded with so many students from Spain to call their coordinator or contact their coordinator. And until they've had that first meeting, they just will not reach out. They need to know that person and maybe have given that person a hug, and given maybe a little gift that they bring, I hope. And then to start having a relationship and building trust. So I encourage the kids that I train to reach out to you guys and to build the relationship that they know they need to have that trust. Habit 2, begin with the end in mind. And that's this idea of having a blueprint for whatever it is you're doing, like would you build a house without drawing up the plans? Well, it's kind of the same thing with the exchange. Like, what is your vision for each exchange? If you start off thinking, this is a great family, this is a great student, how do I want this year to end? And I know that a lot of things are out of my control, but I'm going to do all the proactive things I can to have that ending, that happy ending you're imagining, that they end up at the end of the year, they don't want the kid to go home, they never lose touch with that kid. This is the best experience of their life. The student keeps coming back to visit them. They bring their whole family back. They invite them to their country. They go to their weddings. Like Margaret has a granddaughter now in Germany, right? She's out there somewhere. Margaret, where are you? I love her story that she ended up with her German daughter, yes, and then there she is. Now she's got a granddaughter over there. So if we have this vision that how can every exchange, and each one is different, but how can this particular one and that one and that one and that one, what do they need to reach this beautiful picture I have for how it should end this year, or how the end of the year should be the beginning of the rest of their lives together? I think it's really useful to help us to make choices about how we're going to manage that exchange. Habit 3 is putting first things first. And for me, this has been incredibly relevant. That's why I put the picture of the firefighters there, putting out the fires. How many of you sometimes feel like once the week begins, like Judy says, Monday, you're in firefighting mode, putting out fires, especially at the height of the season when you have all the kids here and all kinds of things happening? Nobody else feels like they're in firefighting mode sometimes? Few people? All right. So the idea here in the 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, which I take and apply again and again to many things, is that you can divide your time into 4 quadrants. And up here at the top, you've got these 2 for things that are very important that you need to do. At the bottom, things that are not important. Over here on the left, you've got the urgent items. and over here on the right, the not urgent. So down here in the not important, not urgent stuff, we have all kinds of interruptions, like emails that are maybe not very, well, emails that seem to be urgent, but maybe they're not important really. Phone calls that are interrupting us and knocking us off track, schedule for what we want to get done. All kinds of things that knock us off track. And then we have over here the time wasters. Things that are not important, not urgent. You start looking on Facebook because you're hoping to network and get some families, and suddenly you find that you have been on Facebook for an hour and a half and you know everything about all your relatives and neighbors and friends, right? So sometimes we get caught up in time wasters. And then there's the fires, the things that are important and they're urgent and they must be dealt with. For example, a student who hasn't told you for weeks that they're not very happy, and suddenly, I want to move. Right? You've heard that before, haven't you? A kid who just pops out of nowhere, out of the woodwork, and they want to move. And it's kind of like, what's going on here? You know, when did this begin? And you realize it started happening weeks ago, or maybe at the very beginning, little misunderstandings, and now they want to move. So fire mode is stuff that really has to be dealt with, and maybe something could have been done a while ago to avoid it getting to this point, but somehow it got to this point, right? So we have this other box here for fire prevention activities, I call them. That means, and that's where we want to try to spend a good deal of our time, is what can we do to be in this mode where we are kind of ahead of the game, like you just said with your planning in advance, and I didn't get the whole thing, how your father said it, but that was very cute. Prior planning prevents poor performance, right? So that would be anything we can do up here in this fire prevention area. So let me give you an example. The very same things we think about when we think about being proactive, those are the kind of things, training, communicating, shaping expectations, and building trust. These are activities that fall in the fire prevention area. And unfortunately, they are super important, but they're not urgent. So those are the things that are always on the list, like, I'm going to do more of this, I'm going to get more in touch with them, or I'm going to, and I have those too on my list. And I've found that it really is true. The more I can find time for those things that are so proactive and so important, and they're up in that fire prevention corner of the time management boxes, the more my influence over the students and parents that I'm dealing with grows and grows and grows, especially this trust part. It makes a really big difference. And it's shaping expectations both with the families, with the parents, and with their children. The fourth habit is think win-win. And this for me has been, I think, like, I can think of the word in Spanish, a puzzle, but we call it one that breaks your head. In Spanish, we have a name for that. It's been, what's that? Yeah, enigma, I want to say rompecabezas, but how will you say that in English? But it's one of those puzzles that it's going to kill you, because it's like trying to figure it out. So it's like, first of all, I think like, what's that? A brain teaser, okay, yes, a brain teaser, but it's one that really, really teases your brain, okay? Really teases your brain, because I really, really want everyone to be happy. I really want to make everyone happy. I know that I can't always make everyone happy, but in the exchanges that I've worked with on my side of the world, I really want the natural parents to be happy. I really want the kids to be happy, and I really want all of you guys at ICES to be happy. And since I'm American and I can imagine how your host families feel and how you feel about your host families, I really want your host families to be happy, and I don't want the kids to move, because I think it almost happened to me once. I was hosting a girl from Thailand for AFS, and I really like AFS too, they're lovely. But they have a lot of volunteers, and so there was a volunteer activity, and actually some of the volunteers found out that I speak English at home, and we were in Spain, and they started thinking it would be good to move her. I was devastated. And I suddenly realized, because I was working in exchange too, that's how the host families in the States feel when they've done all this preparation to have these amazing kids come into their home, and then once in a while there's a kid who decides that I want to move. So I really want to see that everybody gets a win out of this, that I would like to see 100% every single host family ends the year thinking, this was so amazing, give me another one, right? And that every kid goes back to their country saying, this was so amazing. First of all, I love America. And second of all, you got to do this, right? And that the parents as well are happy. But it's really difficult. And it's especially difficult when you're dealing with people who have to adapt to another culture. And I know that because that's what I'm having to do for the last 25 years in Spain. Many times I feel like this. When you're adapting to another culture, you're trying so hard to fit in and to do things their way, but it's not comfortable for you many times. So I understand the kids, and I understand their natural parents when they feel sometimes that something's going on that doesn't work for them. And I can see that it's all part of this normal process of going to another country, fitting in, adapting, becoming part of another family. I become part of a Spanish family. It's actually my third because I had 2 host families before. And there's a lot of adaptations. So in my experience in exchange, a lot of the win-win with the kids is about what's in their head. And I don't know who said this back there, was talking about your attitude, that's the proactive thing that you can control. I teach that to the kids. I actually have a little lesson, a little PowerPoint where I show them what proactivity means. They're teenagers. A lot of them have never heard about it. They don't know what it means to be proactive. And then more than anything, what are the benefits if you could be more proactive and if you could learn to be happy with the wonderful situation that you have, that your coordinator has set up for you here in the United States, and the parents too. The parents are also going through a mental feeling of this type of adaptation sometimes when they get reports from their kids about strange things happening in the United States, things they just don't understand, like, I don't know if I should go into that. That's a whole another topic. We've written a blog post about the strange things Americans do, but believe me, the kids report some pretty interesting things that are super normal here and no big deal. In fact, they're fantastic, but when you report them to the other side of the world, they sound really wild. So a lot of times win-win. And for the host family, we've got the schools too. We want them to win. We want the students to win. And I'm sorry, I can't help it. I want the parents to win too, because I think if you have happy parents, a lot of other things flow. So how do you get that? And a lot of times for me, it's this training, teaching, communicating, shaping expectations, because there's a lot of external stuff that simply is not going to change. It's going to be the way it is. And the more people can learn how to become more flexible and open-minded, which is a real process that needs a lot of communicating to accomplish sometimes, and a lot of work on the part of that person. But I like to think about this every time. Many times when there's a really difficult issue, I'll stop and just think, okay, I'm totally stuck in this idea of what I want. Like, my thing often is that I'm over there in Spain, and as an American, I'm like, it's me against the world. I want this kid to stay where they are, and I can see that they have a fantastic placement, and there's no reason to be fussing about this or that. I want them there. And so I'm fighting with the parents, and I'm fighting with the kid, and I'm fighting with the other people in the agency because they're not Americans. And I stop and think, wait a second, what would win-win look like here? And that's the power of this principle, this habit. Not that it's so easy to say, hey, we should all go for win-win-win. No, that you stop and you ask yourself, what would it look like? Do I even know what it would look like? Have I even stopped to think about what actually would be the win for the parent? They're saying that it's a change of family, but is that really the win? No, actually, they just want their kid to be happy. Okay, I made a little progress on win-win. The kid, they're telling me that they want to move for X reasons. The kid also just wants to be happy, and they want to solve XYZ problems, right? Okay, I made another little bit of progress. Maybe now I'm understanding the problem in a different way. I know what will be a win for the organization here, you guys, for the host family. And then that helps me to start thinking in a more positive and in a broader, I guess, a broader way, rather than just the first thing that I see as what I should aim for. And that they actually, they do their part so that the families are falling all over themselves to host again and talking to their friends saying, you've got to do this too. So those are all wins, and I think we have to think about all of those things. You count as well, and if you're going for your win as well, that's going to put you into proactive mode as well. How am I going to get that? The fifth habit is seek first to understand and then to be understood. And, you know, identify a lot with Judy. I'm also not naturally a good listener. I don't know. There are naturally good listeners out there, and I know because I'm married to one. He just is the best listener in the world. But I find listening hard. But this habit has helped me a lot to improve my listening. And this stopping and realizing that the other person will not hear me until they feel entirely heard. In the book, 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, he describes it like this, that the other person, it's almost like they lack oxygen as they're wanting to get across to you their point. And when you listen, you are giving them oxygen, and they start to relax. No longer are they so stressed about whether or not they're going to get their point across or they're going to get their chance to tell you. So this is something that I would have to say, I don't consider myself naturally a good listener. It's super hard for me, but I try so hard to remember this again and again, and when I use this, it works magic. Absolute magic, because not only do I give the other person oxygen and calm them down, whether it's a natural parent or a student, but I get so much good information that will help me to do what I've got to do. I'm not kidding you. You cannot believe the information that you get when you just relax and tell yourself, okay, this call's not going away. I'm just going to sit down with my notebook and I'm going to start taking notes. And I'm going to treat this natural parent who's very upset and confused and doesn't know what's going on, I'm going to treat them like they're the most important person in the world. I'm going to interview them just like I did when I used to work as a journalist, as if they were the most important subject of the most important article I have to write. I'm going to make them feel listened to. It's what I call detective listening, which I talked about last time. It works miracles because as humans, we often don't realize just how much we don't really know what's going on inside that other person, and especially when you're dealing with people from other countries. For me, working in exchange in Spain, I started about 10 years ago. I've been there 25 years. When I started, I thought I just really knew everything about Spain. You know, I have a Spanish degree and I've been there for 15 years. I'm married to a Spaniard. I have a mother-in-law, Spanish mother-in-law. You know, I knew everything about the culture. No, I knew nothing. Nothing. When I started working in exchange and manning that line to the parents, I was their person, their go-to person, and listening to the Spanish parents talk about what they thought about what was happening in the States, what they thought about Americans, what they thought about our culture, our values, our way of doing things. Oh my goodness, I learned so much. And that's the same thing, got 10 minutes, thank you. That's the same thing with working with these exchange students. There are things inside of their minds, their hearts. There's values in there behind the behaviors you're seeing and the host families are reporting, that if you sit down and really, really interview those kids and hear them out and get it all out on the table and find out why you want to change, why is that a problem, and why is that a problem, and why is that and why do you feel that way, and what do you really think is going to happen? If you get to the bottom of it, you are going to be surprised at how much you learn about their culture. That for me it's been so exciting. I'm so glad I've done this, if anything, just to finally understand the country where I'm living a little bit better, because now I understand I only know a little bit. I used to think I knew a lot. Now, after all this, I have a lot more learning to do. So activate your curiosity and let every issue be the most amazing adventure. Having that thinking also helped me to feel happier solving issues. And then I would think this issue here is going to help me prevent the next one. And not only that, I'm going to take a lot of learnings into my personal life, and I'm going to use it to transform that as well, and it does. So seek first to understand and then to be understood, and I encourage you to always have a notebook and keep taking notes on everything they tell you, and take some time now and then to go back over it. Habit 6 is synergize. You know, we could think of every person as a puzzle piece, and when we all come together, we make something bigger and more interesting. But you could also think that any issue you deal with, each person involved holds a whole little bag of puzzle pieces inside of them. And when you synergize and you're listening and you're opened up and sharing and talking, you can get access to those pieces and you can make things that are new and different and better, new solutions, new ideas. And that's where synergy comes in. This is the most challenging habit for me. I showed you this at the last conference, those who were here. One of my favorite cartoons, the visually challenged individuals who are around the elephant. And each one of them has a different idea of what an elephant is because they only have access to one piece of it. And this is what another thing I find is every time I deal with an issue in exchange, it's fascinating actually to find out just how differently each person is perceiving what's going on, and then to try to get a bigger picture of the whole thing by listening to them and seeing if we can synergize and come up with new and different solutions that nobody maybe has ever thought of before. I do this a lot with food with kids. Anyone who's had a Spanish kid knows that food is like the number one top value in their entire life, right? And they're used to having the food appear magically on cue at different times of the day. So I've sat down to look with them at the food pyramid, something that I don't think they really have any idea of using until I offer it to them. And how can we brainstorm, ways of doing food in the United States that meet the dietary requirements that you are so concerned with in your country? And we try to synergize and come up with new ideas, like new ideas for sandwiches that Spanish people love and that they feel includes everything that should be in a lunch or a dinner. And then I recommend that they have little contests in their family to see if they can find new recipes and try them out and share them. But synergy is this idea of finding new solutions. And finally, sharpen the saw, which is this habit of taking the time. For me, it's like getting out in nature, taking long walks and thinking about some of the things that happen in any particular exchange, some of the puzzles you're trying to work on, the brain teasers, I also like to read a lot of books. I've read a lot of books about conflict management, and I highly recommend to all of you to take an interest at some point in your life in conflict management and the amazing materials that are out there. I also took an amazing class from the great courses called The Art of Managing Conflict, and it totally changed my perspective on the immense value of every little tiny thing that comes up, all the things we can squeeze out of it, and all the good things that we can make happen when we understand how to manage conflicts better. And I'm not a master at that either, but it's fascinating. Taking time to write about things and taking time to connect with other people in fun ways that refresh and make you feel happy and excited and energized to keep doing this. That's habit 7. So just to conclude, I'm sure that you guys have all heard of this little story of the woman who's walking down the street and she sees 3 people working, and she asks the first one, "What are you doing?" And they say, "Well, I'm laying bricks." And she asks the second one, "What are you doing?" And he says, "Well, I'm building a wall." And she asks the third one, "What are you doing?" And he says, "I'm building a cathedral." They're all 3 doing exactly the same thing, right? Well, for me, I like to see that could apply to exchange. You can walk up to someone who's working in exchange to a coordinator and say, "Well, what are you doing?" "Oh, well, trying to find a family." Okay. Walk up to the next one. "What are you doing?" "Well, I'm trying to make a really good match so these families have a really great year, and the student too." And you walk up to the next person, "What are you doing?" "Well, I'm changing the world." And that's how it is. That is really what you're doing. All these little actions that you're doing, you can see them as just the day-to-day little things that you're trying to get done, or you can see them as these amazing opportunities that you have because you are changing the world. And the 7 habits of highly effective people are basically just 7 great ideas for how you can be more effective. Effective is getting results, to get the kind of results you want as you are putting your drop in the bucket to make this world a better place. So thanks to all of you for the amazing job you do, and I'll leave you with this idea. I was hoping to kind of do a little bit more work with it, but I'm out of time. So what's your next step? As I see you in the rest of the conference, I'm going to come up to you and I'm just going to say that. I'm like, what's your next step? What inspires you about the 7 habits? Because I would like to learn from you as well. So thank you very much.